Right, so I'd like to get this started as fast as we can because the panel before us went a little long, and it's not often you get all these guys in one room.
Vice versa.
I want to briefly introduce them. You might be wondering what a cultivation panel is doing at a legalization seminar, but the two are very, very closely related. If it wasn't for the outlaws in our movement, we wouldn't be anywhere near legalization. It's through the breeders, the people that have used illegally, people that have grown illegally, that we got to a point where we can offer the medicine and the quality that we do. So whether they're considered outlaws or not, whether we all are, I'd like to give them their due and make sure that everybody knows they do belong in the legalization panel. So I'd like to introduce them real quick and then let them speak a little bit about themselves. First off, and I do have the tallest panel, I think, right? Because it's very Euro heavy, Holland. So from Amsterdam, we have Luke from Paradise Seeds. He's been around, one of the longest, creator of one of the better indicas, I think, in Sensi Star, one of the better sativas in Atomical Haze, a favorite here in Toronto, right? To his left is Sasha, the joint doctor, a real pioneer in this field. He doesn't really go out much, right? He's a mountain guy or a woodsy guy, but he's the one who ushered in the new age of auto flowers. Responsible for this new phenomenon here. And we were together about 12 years ago, and I actually saw it, and I thought to myself, what the hell is he doing, you know? But he's changed the world when it comes to genetics. To his left, Simon, creator of the perfect 5, they say, out in Europe. 5 of the most sought after, used strains for other crosses. He's the real deal, doesn't release anything until it's really ready, you know? And his real name is Simon Smit, but he doesn't use it because it's too common in Holland, so we call him the professor. To his left is Matt Beren. I'm really happy to get him on here because he usually doesn't, he's usually in the background. A pioneer in Canada as far as CBD strains, that new cannabinoid that's always been present, that it's making quite the buzz, which we'll talk about. So we got to rush it a bit. We're going to talk a bit about the hot topics in the breeding community. I'd like to pass it over, give them a couple of minutes each to better introduce themselves, better than what I did. So we'll start off with Luke. Oh, sorry. If you can each tell us a little bit about your philosophy, your breeding philosophy. I want to know why you do what you do and what you aim for. So I got more confidence.
Yeah, as you have heard, my name is Luc. I run a seed company since 20 years, Paradise Seeds. We're originated in Amsterdam, and we have started with a lot of growing first in the 1980s, and then we got caught, busted by the police. So the only way to continue was producing seeds, which I was doing already for our hobby and breeding, inbreeding. We were like getting collection of varieties from all over the world, and then I started to play with it. And in 1994, 20 years ago, we had our seed companies actually registered at the Chamber of Commerce in Amsterdam. It's 20 years ago. And yeah, it was a hobby of mine, probably for all of us, and a good way to create new varieties and find out the new genetics or new existing genetics and breeding them. And creating our own marijuana at first. That was how it started with me. And people came over, tourists to Holland, and we were selling our stuff at coffee shops. And they said, "Can we bring some seeds with us home?" So that's how actually everything started to accumulate. And now we're 20 years further. I'm a bit gray. But we're still on our way and continuing. That's my history anyway. And
thank you.
I'll give you to Sasha.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks, John. I'm just going to give you a little background. I don't like usually talking about myself. I'm not here to self-promote, but I just want to tell you a little bit of my story, because if you know the background, you'll know a little bit more about why I do what I do at the Joint Doctors. I was introduced to cannabis at an early age. I'm a second-generation organic cannabis farmer. My dad came from Poland, 1968. He learned English from listening to Bob Marley and the Beatles. And cannabis was central to this new consciousness, this new hippie consciousness that he discovered when he came over. And that's really shaped who he is. And thing is, my dad was incarcerated for the first time for cannabis distribution when I was 12. And it's difficult to have your father removed, especially a father you love so much, taken away and incarcerated at such a young age. So basically, that put the initial fear in me, and you never quite get rid of that fear of being incarcerated. Now, since then, before I discovered cannabis, before I was using cannabis, I was learning about, I was watering his plants. I was surrounded by cannabis in many forms. I didn't decide to try cannabis for the first time until I was 17, in spite of that fact. And I fell in love, and it's been a partnership. It's been a love affair since then. So since that point, I've been trying to find a way to pursue my passion in cannabis and stay safe, keep my family safe, keep my friends safe, steer everybody into legal avenues. That's why I see a lot of my friends. I see Chester over here, one of the pioneers. We're in the hemp business together. I got the first license to grow cannabis in the modern era in Quebec, back in '98. So and since then, it's taken me on a trip, culminating with today. I'm producer and breeder of auto-flowering seeds, and I'm lucky enough to be sitting here, to be free, pursuing this career, and I definitely feel blessed. And when I'm surrounded by all you people and these respectable breeders, I think I'm not afraid anymore. So happy to be here.
Okay, it's my turn now, I guess. My name is Simon, as John already said.
Smith.
I think Simon is quite enough. Serious Simon, maybe, or something like that. My story is a bit like comparable to Luke's, that you start as a hobby, you start growing. The only thing, maybe I'm a little bit older than you, probably Luke, I'm not sure, but I started when I was 25. Smoked for the first time when I was 25. And I was in another country, and then I liked it, and I immediately started collecting the seeds because they were in the weed. You know, that was in those days that was a normal thing. So I brought those seeds ultimately back to Holland, and I was a biologist. I studied biology, so just growing the seeds out was sort of a normal thing to do, interesting, and you had plants, and it was anyway. It was just that's how the hobby started, I guess, and probably we all started like this somehow. And it was just a natural thing, you know, to put a male and a female together, and you get seeds, and you go from there. And at some moment, people start to ask you for the seeds. They would like to try the seeds, and so that was really great. And at some moment, people started to ask me, you know, can I sell your seeds? And I said, okay, why not? You know, and it just starts rolling. I didn't do much myself, really, to that effect. It just happened. That's how it feels. And now I'm sitting here, you know, and I don't know how I got here, but John asked me. I think that's how it was. And anyway, I'm also my company also is for 20 years now in existence. So
congratulations on the anniversary, Simon.
Very good. And we know each other from the beginning, basically, you know. So it's really nice.
And you still shake hands, right?
We still say we've always been good. We never had any problem, really. And it's really
say that with all the breeders?
no. I know.
And that's not what Luke said.
No.
With breeders sometimes?
Yeah, but we were always good, and it's really nice to, well, you know how it develops, that you meet other people like Luke, but you know, and it continues, like Sasha later on, like Matt, one of my big friends. After this fair, I'm going with Matt. I'm staying a couple of days with him, like I did last year. But I had a fantastic time with him. He's really a great guy. And there's many nice people in this business, so it's really a fun trip all along. And anyway, I think it's Matt's turns now.
Hi everybody, I'm Matt from the House of the Great Gardener.
My story is the Canadian medical scene. Back in, I'm gonna go back to like 1999, and I was in London, Ontario, and we were growing weed. I was a raver back then, and sort of growing weed for me was just something I did, I don't know, because I couldn't sleep. But it sort of took a change. It took a change for me. I ended up meeting a bunch of ladies that were into shamanism, and I ended up working with these ladies for 5 years. But over those 5 years, cannabis more and more became essentially like a teacher to me. And for me, a lot of it was the journey into how to make cannabis better. And it started off, and I had these amazing spiritual teachers, the old ladies, I call them the old ladies because it was just a group of old ladies, and me, I was like 20 years old, and they were just like, oh, who's this 20-year-old raver kid wants to hang out with the old shamanistic ladies, right? So I would sort of always ask them, because we'd always do the drum circle, and you sort of set your intention, and my intention would always be to go meet the spirit of cannabis, right? That's all I ever wanted to do. And you start getting these answers of, oh, why do you grow cannabis? And then, you know, at that time, I had a basement, and I grew some cannabis, and allowed me to essentially be like a professional raver. I didn't have to get a job or anything. So it was like, why do you grow cannabis? And it was like, oh, I guess I need to pay my bills. And it's like, oh, so you're growing cannabis to make money. And it's like, oh, okay, right? Like, well, the cannabis plant is a very spiritual plant. And the cannabis plant also wants to do its best for you. It's a symbiotic relationship. You want to grow good cannabis, and the cannabis wants to be good cannabis for you. So the question was, it's like, well, when does the cannabis reach its spiritual, energetic peak? And the sort of answers came as, you know, oh, well, if you're growing it for money, then the plant understands that, and the plant wants to do its job for you, so the plant wants to make you money. So you exchange your cannabis for money. So at that moment, the cannabis reaches its energetic peak. It's in your hand, just sitting there. So then the question was, well, you need to learn how to get that energetic peak of the cannabis to occur after you've smoked it. So you got to sort of switch your intention, right? So for me, it was I did a lot of journeys, and I ended up jumping in my car from London, Ontario. I drove out west with the sole intention to find somewhere where I can grow cannabis with the intention to make somebody feel better. Moved into a house in Victoria. I had no idea that the Vancouver Island Compassion Society was even there. I went out, I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna find somewhere where I can get rid of this. I ended up meeting Philippe Lucas and joined the Vancouver Island Compassion Society and started working with them. Started meeting people where smoking cannabis was the sole intention for them was to feel better, right? It was a perfect mix. Essentially started working for the Vancouver Island Compassion Society. We ended up building an entire facility for the Vancouver Island Compassion Society, and all in return I wanted was a $30,000 a year job. I could have easily made well into six figures if I would have just done it myself, but I said, I just want $30,000 a year, and I don't care, because my sole intention is to produce the best product possible, and I wanted to eliminate the dollar value. I didn't even want to think about it. I wanted my sole intention to be in growing that cannabis. And because of that, and we accomplished that, and then we were busted, and we went through the Constitutional Challenge trial, and John and Kirk, won the Constitutional Challenge, so everybody now can grow two, or you can grow for two people, and you can have 4 licenses in a room. You know, we did that. So and then from there, doing that for 12 years and collecting all the best strains that we knew that worked in the compassion clubs. And I got friends in Montreal and friends in Toronto and Vancouver, and we collected all those strains together, and we had a solid indica to sativa line. And then from there, someone was like, oh, you guys need to make sort of seeds out of that. So in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, we've slowly made all the seeds that we could. The feminized, just the strain or the clone only ones, made a few strains of ourselves. All our strains now are the final phenotypes of those selections are made by the members of the clubs. We don't make those selections anymore. We've learned that the members of the club need to make the final selections on genetics. So all of our, essentially Hayoma and Barber Bud, those are the two of our genetics that are picked by the members. So, and then from there, the last 2 years we've worked on putting the CBD into all of our genetics. So we're just coming to the end of our first major experiment in the completion of finding genetics that have CBD, have flavor, and we're slowly, at the end of this year, we'll have those seeds available to the medical community of cannabis and Canada, and hopefully beyond. So that's my story.
Thanks, Matt. We're kind of running a little short on time, so we're going to deviate a little bit from the format we discussed. We've got really 4 experts in very unique fields in the cannabis breeding. So we originally wanted to go around and talk about feminized seeds, the controversies, the pros and cons about them, autoflowers, how they changed the game, CBD and other cannabinoids, terpenes, and basically what we have yet to learn and what is one more important than the other, and also the future of cannabis. So what I'd like to do instead is give 5 minutes to each panelist on a specific topic. Luke, being the person that doesn't offer a regular variety, it would probably be best to speak on why feminized is so important, why some of the rumors and myths about it are not true, because it's shared by many on this panel anyway. Otto, I want to give a little bit about his auto experience, Sasha, and how the new autos have evolved from their primitive beginnings. Matt, I'd like to speak about the work he's doing with the CBD, the cannabinoids, what he feels is the next step or the next wonder cannabinoid or mystery within the cannabis plant, because prohibition has made it very difficult to research. And Simon, being the veteran, the oldest amongst us, I want him to, he's been along the longest, I want him to tell us where he thinks genetics and breeding will be in the next 5-10 years. We might have some time for questions, we might not, so just, I'd like to do it that way. So one thing that they all have in common, they started from hobby, but it's really evolved to high science right now. And they're responsible for that in very unique ways. So Luke, I'd like you to begin on feminized, the controversies, the things we spoke about before, what you feel about it.
Yeah, feminized seeds, they are most wanted by the people. I don't have necessarily I say they are better than regular seeds or worse, but if you make good selections, then you can have a perfect crop of feminized seeds. The process of feminizing is quite hard in the beginning. There was hardly any knowledge on feminizing varieties. And Dutch Passion, they were already in 1998 having the first feminized varieties available. And especially in Canada in those days, there was Heaven Stairways with Richard and Overgrow, and everybody was interested in the feminized seeds. And with a good reason, I guess, because feminized seeds, they are easy and it is for everybody available, and you don't have to explain what is the male and what is the female plant, so it's more accessible. And anyway, slowly, gradually, we used to have only regular seeds. We had a catalog with 18 varieties of regular seeds only. But in 2001, I started experimenting with feminizing varieties, and in 2005 we had our first batch of feminized seeds available, and they were sold just like that. And and our regulars, they were going slower every year. There was less demand for regular seeds. So people, about 95% of the people like to get feminized seeds in their gardens.
What about vigor, loss of vigor, introducing hermaphrodites into the lines, and breeding with feminized seeds, which many people still do. Now, is there any problems in using them this way?
Well, yes, of course. You have to make good selections and be sure that your plants are are female and are not, even if they are stressed. You can stress them. You should test them. You know your plants already for many years and generations. And after that, you get to know better that which plant suits well for feminizing. So in that sense, Yes, I think you will find hardly any people that have any problem with feminized seeds unless they are Hermes. So, and the figure and the terpenoids, they can be really very well be preserved, even in a feminized variety. So it is easy for people to use feminized, which are not herming on them. And that...
Luke,
I
can I
think
interfere a little bit?
Yeah.
Something, or maybe it's nice. The other thing I think that what John referring to is many people have, and of course, we all know that some people have certain belief, it's only regular or it's against nature or whatever, and people have also bad experiences with female seeds, and that probably brings out the bad name amongst people. And I think what Luke already is saying is basically that if you do the work right, the work of the breeder, then there's no problem with the female seed. The problem, which brings out the problems in the world with female seeds, is that there is many, companies or breeders or whatever who don't do the work in the right way, and they bring out seeds which are not okay. And what Luke already said, when you start trying to make a plant produce female seeds, that's not so easy. So what you do, you try to find plants which are easy to do that with. And those tend to be the plants which carry hermaphroditic traits, which means you pass it on in the seeds. So those plants are the worst plants to use.
The ones that are easiest are the worst.
And
It's like cloning. Like most people sort of know cloning. If you have a plant that's stressed out and terrible, and you take clones off that stressed out terrible plant, you're going to get stressed out terrible clones. It's the same thing for feminize. You feminize something that's crazy, whacked, and expect to get good seeds out of that. It's not going to happen. Good seeds come from good stock. Good clones come from good plants. Yeah. Pretty much how it goes.
So basically, you select the plants on the traits and not on the fact that it is easy to use this plant because this is an easy plant to turn its sex. And that's what some people have done, which produce bad female seeds,
or sometimes
which gives the bad name.
I think when femmes first came out, it was such a craze that everybody tried to fem old stock, and tried to go like oh my God, the skunk #1 plant that I've had in the basement for 20 years, I need to fem it right away, right? It's like, well, that's not going to work, right? If you sort of create brand new seeds and have a really good looking plant, you can, and fem that works. That's what works. Yeah. So it's the fem's good. Like fem has its place. So
I agree. I think all of us agree on that, right? That fem seeds have their place. And it's like, don't be dogmatic about things. That is in the world, you see that all the time. You also saw it in the former panels talking about different business strategies or whatever the strategies for the future in medical cannabis here, which companies should be allowed to grow seeds, grow cannabis for the patients, and it's all, if you want to put boxes, this is right, this is wrong, no man, there's space enough for everybody and every different strategy and whatever. Let people make their own choices and all that.